the tragedy of Grenfell Tower, has rightly focused minds, and there's been this ongoing debate about test standards and whether they're appropriate, particularly in the world of cladding systems. And do the existing test standards involve real world scenarios, such as service penetration, such as robust mechanical performance criteria being laid down for the panels themselves. To make sure that when firefighting operations are in place, that they're not going to be falling off very quickly, and could be spreading the fire, but also danger to firefighters and also to those who are evacuating the building, perhaps. But all of these things, around a real world scenario are crucial if we fully understand, I think, the impact of fire on the built environment and develop more robust buildings to keep both people and property safe. It is the right thing to do as an industry across all the stakeholders in this particular area. I think the first point I'd like to make is that, as a general view, the insurance industry do support and promote independent third-party testing and standards, whether that be for a product, a service, installers, maintenance, and so on, because we're always looking for an independent sort of framework we can trust and hang our hat on. But I think it has been clear for some time, and obviously this has been, George has alluded to this already, that the tragedy of Grenfell Tower, has rightly focused minds, and there's been this ongoing debate about test standards and whether they're appropriate, particularly in the world of cladding systems. And do the existing test standards involve real world scenarios, such as service penetration, such as robust mechanical performance criteria being laid down for the panels themselves. To make sure that when firefighting operations are in place, that they're not going to be falling off very quickly, and could be spreading the fire, but also danger to firefighters and also to those who are evacuating the building, perhaps. But all of these things, around a real world scenario are crucial if we fully understand, I think, the impact of fire on the built environment and develop more robust buildings to keep both people and property safe. It is the right thing to do as an industry across all the stakeholders in this particular area. And we're all on a journey with this, whatever part we play in the wider fire safety industry.
Okay, yeah, thanks Andy. Let's then look at, so we've established there are some areas lacking, I suppose, in the current system. The FPA and the RISCAuthority, supported by the main insurers, looked at this and developed a new test regime, a new test and assessment regime. George, you've wrapped that up in a standard, if I can call it a standard, RISC 501. What are the main, without going too detailed technically, what are the main differences in the proposed way forward with RISC 501 between the system we've got now and the future?
Yeah, we're not going to call it an official standard. It's a test method and an assessment method combined, and I'll come on to why it's like that. I know you don't want me to get too technical, but to explain the changes that we've made, I do need to explain a bit more of the specific issues that have been highlighted with the current test method. So there's issues with the fuel source that have been raised. It's a large wooden crib that's used at the moment, which is a very large fire size. But there's, it was developed 20 years ago. The standard came out in 2002, and most of the development work happened in the 90s. So there's questions over, is that fuel load still relevant today? And was it ever relevant when it was developed in the 90s? What was the actual scientific basis behind that? It's not published, and we don't really know. There's issues with the construction detailing. A lot of people have commented on how the way these systems are built on buildings differs completely to how it goes on a test rig. In particular, we see a lot of areas that are overprotected, and looking at ways to reduce that. And also the consistency between tests. We can have systems with the same design principles that's set up on completely differently on different test rigs. There's lots of sort of options available to the installer and the system designer when they're testing as to how they want to interpret things, and that leads to a lot of variability between tests. There's issues with the temperature criteria. I sort of mentioned again that the scientific background to that isn't really known. It's mentioned that it's looking at a rate of fire spread of 15 minutes per floor, but the background for where that 15 minutes came from is supposed to be based on the leapfrog effect. So it's comparing it to the effect of if one room ignited, flames come out the window and attack the room above, and then that room ignited and then flames come out and attack the room above, regardless of the cladding system. That would take about 15 minutes. So the goal was not to increase that with the cladding systems, but again, the scientific background behind that hasn't been released, even behind the 15-minute number. So it's a bit unclear what that is all based on. And similarly, there's an exponential nature with cladding systems that you don't get with the leapfrog effect. The leapfrog effect, because it has to go up, reignite the room each time, it's not quite as exponential as a cladding system, which as it spreads, the more it spreads, the faster it spreads. Mechanical performance, which Andy touched on as well, and we've seen incidents, and it's regularly reported, of falling material interfering with firefighting operations, getting in the way, landing on firefighting equipment, fire engines and things, and obviously it's quite easy to see how that could impact on both life safety and property protection, and we see that reflected in the numbers. When it's reported that materials fallen and interfered with firefighting operations, there's about 16 times more fatalities per incident. So we know it has a significant impact, and obviously theoretically, it's very easy to understand why that would be. There's smoke toxicity as well, sort of an emerging issue in all areas of fire safety, and was highlighted quite prominently at the Grenfell Tower incident. And how that should be tackled. So that's something that we've been looking into and researching and finding ways to bring that forwards. There's availability of test information. I think there was two major issues that were highlighted here. One was hiding failed test results. There's a lot of variance with fire tests, and you can repeatedly subject the same system to a test, and through test variance, and also, as I said, by slightly changing the way you do the test setup, not in a way that would reflect a real building, but just how you go about it. And you can have several fails and then get a test pass. And although you've had several fails, so the expected result would be a fail for that system, only the one test pass gets reported. And so that's what everyone sees, and they don't really understand the risk behind it because that information's masked. And the other issue is hiding successful test results. So the reports aren't widely shared, they're not publicly available. And there's clauses in BR 135, like the results of the cladding system must be considered as part of the risk assessment for the building. But the report's often not shared with the fire risk assessor, so he's not able to consider all of the things that were mentioned in the test report.
So I can see, let me just dive a little bit deeper into that. I can see there's some technical changes, some additions, some modifications to how the test is conducted. How, just on the last 2 points, how does doing a different test affect whether the results are shared, whether the results are hidden? That's not addressed by doing a different test.
Well,
It's
mandated in the test standard that the results must be reported, and several features must be reported by the test house that's done it. So if you go on test house websites at the moment, some of them are already doing that as part of a sort of goodwill thing. In RISC 501, it's mandated specifically what you must report and how systems must be described to go on there. And now all the things I mentioned we haven't addressed. We haven't addressed the fuel load, which I talked about, and that's because we wanted this test to be conducted alongside BS 8414. So you can do the traditional test, and while you're doing that, you include some additional clauses, which means you can do a RISC 501 classification at the same time.
So this isn't, sorry George, this isn't in place of 8414. So 8414 goes completely and is replaced by RISC 501. What you're saying is if you do a RISC 501 test, you would also be compliant with 8414 to satisfy current building regs, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, correct. So yeah, any RISC 501 test would be compliant with 8414, but not necessarily the other way around, because the additional clauses So yeah, you could do it separately, but yeah, the plan from our side was that people would do both at the same time, and then you'd get your life safety assessment and you'd get your property protection assessment as well.
So that's from a test lab perspective. From an insurance perspective, Andy, what do you think needs to be done differently by other stakeholders rather than just us as the test lab or us as the advisors, perhaps, to manufacturers?
Yes, that's quite a big question, isn't it, Chris? You've asked me there, but I think there's a couple of strands I'd like to sort of briefly mention. I think, yeah, certainly from our point of view in the insurance world, and first looking at building owners, their architects in the construction industry, it is about early engagement with us is absolutely crucial when working towards maybe a new build, maybe a refurbishment program of an existing building, because in that way we can all work together towards the end result that we all want, which is a robust building that delivers business resilience for the building owner and for all the interested parties, including sort of firefighting in that respect. To make sure that we do have a building which has longevity, will be life safe, but will also have that additional sort of property protection in place. That means the building will stand up longer to fire and perhaps resist fire.